hardly ventured further than my garden gate, which meant I didn't speak to anyone, because my cottage sits entirely on its own at the end of a river, which leads down to the sea. It's near the wildlife hut, where my new job was based, so I caught glimpses of people passing along the lane, but nothing more. I had meant to pop over and say hi to Holly, my new boss, but it took much longer than I'd anticipated to get the cottage straight. I'm not the sort of person who's happy to drop things where they fall, or leave a ring around the bath, or let the bin overflow, so I was never going to keep my possessions mouldering in boxes. I was always the tidy one in our marriage, emptying the dishwasher, sweeping dust from the shelves, picking dirty clothes off the floor, hanging up wet towels left on the bed. The evening before I was due to start my new job, I walked down to the beach as a reward for all my hard work. I'd caught tantalizing glimpses of the countryside as I went about my domestic jobs, the high, majestic hills, and the glinting curve of river. And I don't mind admitting that it filled me with a real sense of pride, the realization that I'd made a change for my own benefit after years of never putting myself first. The sun was dipping down as I left my cottage, casting the sky in a beautiful hue of pinky purple, a flock of geese silhouetted against it in a raggedy V, the air fresh with the sharp tang of salt. I reached the beach in about 15 minutes and sat on the warm shingles, filling my lungs with the cleansing air. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't feeling scared or sad sitting there. I couldn't not. I'd left behind everyone and everything I knew to start again, which is a terrifying prospect, even when it's what you want. Or maybe, in my case, it would be more accurate to say what I needed. Before I left London, people had started to feel overwhelmingly messy, and the idea of being alone for a bit, of reconnecting with myself, felt pretty imperative. But the landscape was ridiculously romantic, and that evening I found it impossible not to associate it with Mel and feel her absence like a missing limb. I let myself wallow, which is something I'd promised myself I would stop doing after the move. But my wife is a conundrum that I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to solve. I have, quite simply, never been as sad or lonely as she made me feel at the end. Although I find that thought hard to reconcile with all the things I know were great about our relationship and all the ways I loved her. We met on a dating app, swiping left and right until we matched. And even though that sounds soulless, we both knew immediately that we'd found our person. In fact, on our very first date, we both deleted the app in front of each other. Maybe we rushed into it. It's something I worry about quite a bit, as we were both 36 and shared a sense that time was ticking. 5 months later, we'd moved in together, and 6 months after that, we were married. We didn't start trying for a baby right away because Mel had just started a new business, but we talked about our family from the beginning, so I never imagined it wouldn't happen. She came off the pill about 18 months after our wedding. Mel's business was pretty successful by then, so we agreed that I would be the main carer when the baby came. I would lie awake at night fantasizing about pushing our child's stroller through the park, mashing bananas for first tastes, holding chubby hands for first steps, marveling over first words. I saw myself recording those moments and sending them to Mel, who'd glance at the buzzing messages in the middle of her meetings and smile. In those early, heady days of trying, we talked endlessly about selling our flat, which we both loved, but was too small for a family. I'd spent months renovating it when we moved in, and it really was beautiful. But it was up 4 flights of stairs, and the only outside space was a balcony. We looked online at houses with gardens, and I thought about the swing set I'd build and the barbecues I'd cook on the weekend. But we couldn't get pregnant, and all too quickly we were both about to turn 40, so we decided to try IVF. Mel insisted on going private, because the NHS waiting times were awful in our postcode. It's not a nice procedure, and Mel was a superstar. But still, the first and second rounds failed. After the first failure...